The Louder Now podcast needs your financial support. I would love to get as many of you as possible to donate $5 a month to keep the podcast going. If you feel like you have gotten value out of hearing me share about my experiences with bipolar and my relationship with God, my church influence, and then also the insight from listening to stories of others, the conversations of guests I've had, please consider making a $5 a month donation. The link is in the notes. It is loudernowpodcast.com/donate. And now here is another episode of the Louder Now podcast.
No, and I have talked about you on here, but I've tried to kind of just keep things general because it's like, it's your story to tell. We came from the same home and we had similar struggles, and my path was different than yours. Obviously, that's how it works. But
Yeah.
so yeah, 10 years ago on this day, I was in a coma for 3 days from a really hard nine-month season. At the very beginning of the episode, you and Scott were new parents, so Noah was born.
Yeah.
Halloween 2012, and literally my episode happened like a few days later.
Right.
And yeah, I was in Kansas City for the first 2 months. I went to the hospital on my 27th birthday, and I came home, and it was just me and mom in Laguna Niguel, and then you and Scott were, an hour away. I didn't have a lot of friends. Long story short, at the end of this really hard episode, what was especially difficult about it was a lot of suicidal thoughts that seemed to not go away, not a lot of relief. And so, yeah, I ended up in a coma because I didn't try. I took all of the medicine that I had. And anyway, so the point of this is not to go and relive the trauma, but just to, what was going through your mind, Monday night, May 6th, when you found out about this. And then, that whole week, May 9th, 10 years ago on this day, I woke up and I didn't have brain damage. I didn't have memory loss. You and Scott, Noah, mom were like the first people I saw.
Wow.
Couldn't talk for the first hour because they were taking stuff out of me. And then my Kansas City friends were there. Most of the people that were there were people that I knew through you and Scott that were there being supportive, Karina and just tons of people, right? But yeah, I've never had you on the podcast, and I think it's kind of just an interesting question. Like, what was you and I were talking a lot in my episode too. I mean, I talked to you like multiple times a week, on the phone because, I didn't have a car. You were like an hour away, and you were a new mom and you were helping me too, so I know that's a
Yeah.
good question, but what were you feeling, you know?
Yeah. Well, Jared, first off, I just want to say, wow, I can't believe that was 10 years ago. And it's just so good. Like, I get a little teary-eyed because it's so good to look into your eyes today that you're here with us. And that really, in my mind, that you survived that time is an absolute miracle. So I just, first just taking in this moment, looking at you and just feeling this tremendous amount of gratitude that you're here, that we're together after 10 years. So.
Yeah, you had your 30th
Oh,
birthday party right before this happened.
right. Like, I had my big 30th, and then recently, obviously, I had my 40th birthday. So it was like, wow, I can't believe it's 10 years, and I have a 10-year-old. But,
Yeah.
what I was feeling, I got the call from mom, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. or so in the middle of the night. I thought, I was used to being the on-call emergency for Viola. So I actually thought it was a call like that of a suicidal student, because I had been on, for 8 years I was the
Oh
on
wow.
call, on call RD. So when mom called me and she was crying and telling me, I just immediately, I think my first response was I just kind of froze. Like I didn't know what to do. I guess when people say, you freeze, fight, flight, whatever, I
Well,
just,
shock is probably a
yeah, it
shock
was just
too.
like total
Yeah.
shock.
Right.
Um, but once I got through that and was basically on my way to see you, I mean, the thing I just felt was so much sadness and so much grief, because I just thought, here is this, my buddy, my friend, my brother, the person that was been by my side my whole life
Yeah.
and knows every single thing about our family, right? And there's no other person like that, because we don't have any other siblings, right? And so dad and mom, and then the struggles that we had growing up. And so I
Yeah.
just felt tremendous amount of sadness and grief of just going, I cannot lose you.
Right.
I cannot be alone in what feels like only you get with growing up, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I also, at that time I had been through my own major depressive episode. And so I just felt like I survived that time and just felt like, no, you're going to get out of this,
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I just was hoping and praying for a miracle that somehow you would make it, so that you could see that you can move forward in life, with this disease, illness.
Right.
That's a little bit of what I was feeling.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's good to look you in the eyes too. And yeah, it's amazing. 10 years, 3,650 days or whatever later, right? And I did have a relapse 4 years ago. So that's not, that will be another milestone too someday, but nothing compared to that time for sure. And yeah, I think waking up, starting to, when I woke up out of the coma and then I started to just realize how many people were in the hospital there with me. And I think what makes these things hard for people, that you learn this when you go to hospitals or do in recovery, is who are the people that are there for you when things are hard, right? It's kind of easy to support people when things are going well. I mean, that just seems more natural to us as people. Like, yeah, I'll go to your birthday party. Yeah, I'll go to your wedding. But wow, when things are rough, I don't think we always know how to handle that. And I was telling mom that people have always loved me, you know, and that feels sort of kind of narcissistic to say or something, like to say that about myself, but it is true. And I think what made that time so hard was, I didn't have a lot of love for myself. I was low on self-love, and sure, what I was going through was very complicated. It wasn't just like, hey, you should forgive your dad and then you'll snap out of this, or hey, you should believe that you can change, even though I did make it through and things did change and things did get better. So, but also you guys, you and Scott, I mean, and you guys, you gave me a lot of advice in that time too. I don't know if you remember things that you said 10 years ago. And I think some of it was coming because you're right, you had an episode in 2011, right? Just a couple years before this, a few years before. And so I think you were probably saying a lot of things based on what you had just went through too,
Mm.
about how things can change. And I remember one time we were talking and you were like on the treadmill working out or something, and he was like, you got to do the work. You got to do the work, or something like that, while you were like working.
Oh, geez.
Not a Peloton, people, just a regular treadmill, But
Lord.
yeah, and so anyway, it's just really the purpose of this is just to connect and hang out on this day and
Yeah.
memorialize it. But also, I love you deeply, and I know we just saw each other at Disneyland, and but you've also inspired me and Scott. I mean, you guys are been married almost 20 years, and it's just amazing that I don't know what I would have done. I mean, mom was there for me too, but you guys were, mom, you and Scott, that's the top of the list as far as people who were there helping me.
Yeah.
So what have you learned in the last 10 years about yourself and about um, what's helped you stay stable because you do a lot. You have four boys now. At the time, you only had one. 10 years ago, you are a businesswoman. You like doing the real estate thing. I mean, you're not. How do you how do you stay how do you stay stable? Like what helps you? You know?
Yeah. Well, that's such a good question. And I mean, the first thing I can think of is just, I mean, God, just so much grace, right? That I think life is so hard. Life is very hard. And I think when you grow up and you've been through a lot of trauma, like we have in our family, and then you have, mental health running in our family lines of depression, anxiety, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You have
Well,
some
bipolar, but yeah, same thing. Yeah, yeah.
depression, anxiety, bipolar.
Right, right.
It feels so unfair that, like, gosh, you have, this trauma growing up, and then you have in your family line, mental health issues, right? And you kind of look around, at least I did in my 20s, and I just felt like life was really unfair. Like, why did it have to be me that has, you know, essentially for me feeling like a lot of anxiety in times, or feeling that depression.
Well, you realize that when you leave home too, also, right? Like it
Yep.
happened to me at IHOP. I was almost 22, just after 3 years, and you had struggles when you went to California, right, to school. So
Yeah.
you also realize that when you're on your own, and that's the other layer, like, oh, I thought I was going to be more like well equipped for this.
Yeah, but I thought I was going to be well equipped for life, and then you go,
Right,
oh gosh. So I think now what I know in the decade and staying stable is like, everyone is fighting a hard battle, and life is hard for everyone.
right,
Not everyone has a certain childhoods or necessarily has mental illness, but
right.
everyone is fighting a really hard battle in life. The default is not happiness. The default is not, it is struggle. And I think now it's like I've found so much meaning in the struggle.
Right, right,
Um, practically speaking, like I started going to therapy at 25.
right.
Um, and then was in therapy, consistently for a good 5 years every week. And then kind of took a break. And then uh, about 2 years ago, now going to therapy again once a month, which has just been so good. I think so I think therapy, realizing the bigger picture that a lot of people struggle and life is hard. I think, having having friends, having Scott, people to process, essentially like understanding my story, you know, how I grew up, what I feel, during the day.
Yeah, yeah,
And, you have these good friends that journey with you and they know your story, and even like an amazing therapist. Like I had a therapy session this morning and just struggling with, having 4 kids and running a business. And and just this feeling like it's not enough, it's never enough. And then just unpacking that today with my therapist of like,
yeah,
when did that question, when did I experience that not enough, right? And so
yeah, yeah, that can be a burden. I mean, that's very real for a lot of people. Because I look at you, I have a different perspective, probably, and we were joking about this recently. I was like, I see you as very successful, and it's like, well, then what is success? Is success like, am I attaching that to like your real estate job, which I see as awesome, or do I see it's your success is just your family, right? Like your relationship with Scott, your kids, and it seems to be a combination of both of those things, but maybe your perspective of yourself is different, similar to what I was saying. Like people can love Jared, and I think that's helpful, but what do I think about it? And I
yeah,
think the not good enough thing did for both of us start when we were kids, right? It did start as this, we both wanted to be actors and be famous. Like I don't really know if you want to do that anymore. I think I still do. No, I'm kidding. But that's why I'm in LA, guys. Auditions are an hour away. Let's go. Let's go. No, and anyway, I think you know what I'm saying. But like, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I could see you and go, wow, that's a little strange. Why do you think that you're not enough? You have a beautiful home and a good marriage and good kids, and there's plenty of people that don't have good marriages and don't have good relationships with their kids. But do you think maybe you're just also on the journey because you don't want to recreate what we had as kids? Like you want to do better?
yeah, it's like in my head I feel like I am enough, or maybe my heart or something. It's like it's just, it's that ambivalence. It's like there's times and days I'm like, oh yes, I'm so grateful, this is enough, right? But then I think just in our world, I mean, when is enough, right?
Yeah.
There's always more to achieve, more to do, more, and we're just inundated with everything. And then if you come from, I feel like I receive that message a lot, right? And so I think what I'm hitting at 40 with 4 kids and a business is, what I'm hitting limitations, and I'm needing to simplify my life, and I'm used to always doing it all. And so it's like, if I don't do it all, is it enough? Am I enough? Can I
And
simplify? Can I be okay with, you know, when I have 4 kids, like somebody's always disappointed, right? Or if I'm giving, somebody's always in a bad
oh,
mood,
that's funny, but
right?
one,
And
two kids are happy, the other two are sad, or something. Yeah,
yeah, and if I'm doing amazing at work, then it's like maybe I'm falling short as a mom or as a wife. When I'm nailing it as a mom, then maybe I'm disappointing a client. And so I think that's what it is. It's just being okay in the acceptance of, I'm a human,
yeah.
and like, this is what I can give for today. And I think it's just hard to simplify life in today's day and age with the internet and social media and all the messages we're receiving.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the best analogy that helps me, probably since our parents were flight attendants, is,
Mom and dad together were flight attendants for the first like 10 years of our childhood,
yeah, we grew
which
up on
was
planes,
which was
right?
rough, but yeah. Yeah.
So the biggest thing I think with coping is like, you get excited. I get excited, right? Metaphorically speaking, to go on a trip, whatever that is, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to go away to college. Oh, I'm going to get married. Oh, I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to start a career. I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to start this hobby, this thing. And it's like the packing up for the trip is awesome, right? And you're on the plane and you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then,
Can I keep the can, please?
yeah. And then
Not anymore, people.
you
But yeah,
take,
yeah.
when you take off, you hit that turbulence of, your all of a sudden, I don't know, I feel like every time I hit that turbulence kind of taking off and it's dark in the clouds, you kind of like, I'm like asking Jesus in my heart again, like, okay, uh-oh.
You're like, did that sinner's prayer that I prayed 14 times as a 5-year-old, did that stick? God fell
Like,
asleep. He's like, oh, I need you to do it again because this is
like,
life or death. But
well, just making sure. I mean, it just happened to me because I when we were going to California, all of a sudden, and it's like, oh my, but
you're thinking the mask is going to drop from the ceiling. But yeah,
and then every time, all of a sudden, you get to clear blue skies and it's sunny, right? And I think that's now when you're younger and you go through hard times, you just feel like that turbulence, right? It's you're not going to get, you're going to crash
yeah,
and you're not going to get above to the smooth sailing. And it doesn't really matter how many times I make it out of a hard time in that turbulence. It always feels like this is a moment. Oh my gosh, I'm going down.
a little bit of yeah. Well, I mean that's normal, and then it might be a little, all or nothing kind of thinking, or all the things we do in our minds and stuff. But
Yeah. But then you do reach and
yeah,
so I think having the fourth child, has been turbulent, right? It's been these feelings of like, wait, I was just in the sunny, clear ridge top, looking out, feeling, and it's like, whoa, okay, this is turbulent. Like, this is a hard muscle to have again, and there's some turbulence. But I think now I just know, okay, I'm going to come out of this, and I'm going to be flying high, right, in the sun.
yeah. Only in the summer in Seattle, but yes, no. But yeah, no, yeah, and I think, back to advice you gave me in this time, and you weren't the only one that said this, but I felt like maybe I listened to you more than I listened to other people. No offense to all the people that tried to help, but you said that a lot. You said, look, you can't stay in an episode for forever, right? And what does forever mean? A really long time, right? Like that's the hard part when people are in these things where every day feels the same. Hopelessness gets piled on top of hopelessness and despair. You don't believe something that you don't have the power to correct, which is that like life changes and you can change at the same time. It's like seasons, right? There's always a summer, always a fall. Now depending on where you live, California doesn't, we don't have as much of a distinction. It's like, well, it's going to get hot. It's May. And I think we have a hard time accepting that about ourselves. And so it's not like do nothing, but sometimes the, the thing is you just give it some time. Like you can't stay stuck forever. And I think more the long-term plan is don't just do nothing, like go to therapy or get a vision for feeling better, right? Or doing better. And I think maybe that's what's missing with people too. They don't, all they know is trauma, right? Or all they know is anxiety. They don't know what it's like to not be anxious. Like that's a hard one. You can't really teach someone that. You need to kind of go out and experience, and so because yeah, so but you yeah, we
Well, I
made
think
it.
when
Yeah,
you struggle, yeah, well, anytime you struggle,
yeah,
I think it's really hard to do the same things you do without when you're not struggling.
right. Yeah, that was
So
yeah, that was another layer to your advice as well. Yeah,
exactly. So it's going, okay, this is a hard time. It's like a time is going to end. This can't stay forever. Even if you were like, I got to be in this episode till I die. It's not going to happen.
well,
But
yeah, I
then the
think
second thing
yeah,
is,
yeah,
is the you can be in the hardest place. And this is something I try to teach my kids. It's like you can feel absolutely miserable and still do everything you need to do, right?
yeah, it's true. Yeah, yeah, you said that a lot. Like, you gotta still go and do a workout, still call someone on the phone and talk, still pay your bill, or talk to your customer service person in another country, or whatever, right? You can still do well, yeah. And I think this is our we are we have emotions as people, we feel. And I think sometimes there's with bipolar or these things, yeah, people can say, well, you're an empath, you're sensitive to emotions. So that makes it really hard when the emotions aren't good feeling emotion you feel. And I think that we elevate that a little too high because we only want to do things if we feel it. And it's like that is very wow, if you go down that path, then you're probably not going to do a lot. Like, oh, I don't feel like going on a run. Well, then you're probably never going to run. I mean, once in every 50th. So anyway, I think we talked about that a lot over the years too. Like, do things when you don't feel it, and like that is gonna like pay off for you in the long term of as you get older. So
Yeah, I think you look at these people, anyone you look at in life, you think, oh, that person has so much discipline, or that person's amazing. Most of what you see is just habits, you know?
yeah,
People just have really good habits. I mean, I just wake up every morning, I drink coffee, I journal, open up my Bible, open up, a book, and people are, how do you have a quiet time as a mom? I mean, it's honestly a habit. It's just, I just sit there and I've been doing that for so long. It doesn't feel like it deserves a medal or that I'm trying to do something different. But then, right, having these other habits feels so hard to form. But the
right,
minute you all of a sudden are in a hard time, the only thing that feels good to do is you just want to sit and you want to think your way out of it. You're just like, okay, I'm going to think, my brain is going to solve this somehow.
yeah. Fight your thoughts with thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And so you're going, I got to get out of this. How do I get out of this? I got to quit this thing, or I got to do that. And you can't get out of it by thinking. And that's what's
yeah.
so hard. It's like you have to go through the hard time and keep stringing along good. If you go through your whole day and you do everything that you feel like you can't do, because
Right.
that's when I was in my episode. It's just like, I mean, I felt like it was impossible to go to the car wash. I felt like it was impossible to go to the grocery store. I felt like it was impossible to do anything,
Hmm.
but you keep stringing it along. And at the end of the day, you're going to feel a tiny, tiny better than if you sat in your room and you did absolutely nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But you don't necessarily, yeah, you feel terrible doing all that stuff, you know?
yeah,
And so you have to keep doing the next right thing and moving forward.
yeah. You've also talked about your marriage too. I mean, really, Scott, who has not been on the podcast yet, but someday. Scott has helped you a lot too, right? And maybe that's important for people too, like marriage, friendships with people. Like we usually also get better, the whole you're the average of 5 people you hang out with kind of thing, right? We usually
Yeah.
level up when we're also around people who are like wanting to make these kinds of changes too. I think that that's another layer, and that could be missing for a lot of people as well. There's a lot of loneliness that gets attached to all of this stuff, and you can still struggle and have friendships too. So I mean, I'm sure. Anyway, you've talked about that before too, like
Yeah.
being
Well, I
married
think
to
I think
Scott.
Scott is a phenomenal at listening and empathizing. And I think that is a hard skill that, you're not really taught that in school. If your family didn't model good listening, who
Hmm.
who teaches you how to listen? What is listening? I mean, obviously
Well,
somebody,
listening to respond is our default. Like, oh yeah, 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 that's cool. I didn't really hear what you said. I got to give you my thing, and then you're like, did you even hear what I just said?
yeah, like when
Yeah,
you share something about your life, you can either give out like a supporting statement, and that supporting statement would help somebody to keep talking about their own life, or you can give out a shifting statement, which shifts the focus back on you, right? And majority of people, unless you're really a trained therapist, or you're trained in that way,
or a coach, that's like a coaching thing. But yeah,
you kind of hear somebody talks about themselves and then you shift it back to you. And it's not always bad, but I think when people are in a hard place, they want to feel seen, heard, and known.
right. Yeah, you can't always shift it, because I know I've struggled with that, where it's like, oh man, I don't think I'm really listening to people, or like I don't need to relate it to something that's in my life. I was laughing because I've done it on the podcast. It's like, wait, all right, let's cut that out. That had nothing to do with what you said.
Well, I think when
Yeah.
when somebody's speaking, the idea is the next thing that somebody's saying is in your own words, you're really trying to articulate back what you hear the other person saying to make sure that you are understanding what they're saying.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
hear you saying, yeah,
so yeah, so somebody goes to this whole tangent and then you go and then you totally misinterpret it. And someone's like, no, 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 I don't mean that. And until that person really is saying back what they think you're saying, then all of a sudden that person goes, yes, like I feel heard. Right.
right.
So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
what is that person communicating? Like my kids, right? They are coming home at times and they're feeling very, maybe they're feeling sad or angry about something, right? But it's like, I think as a mom, sometimes you're just going, you got to do your homework. You got to do this. You got to, we don't have time for this. But it's sort of allowing them to empty out. It's like, okay, oh, wow, you're angry. And then,
yeah,
when you're acknowledging that emotion in them, okay, man, you're really angry. That
yeah,
would that would feel very hard. Then the way that I think you can turn it back to yourself for a brief moment is the empathy is going, yeah, like, man, when I was your age, school was exhausting. And I remember having a hard time with this, right? It's like a brief moment, turning it back to yourself. But then you're, going back on them. And so I think people feel lonely because they don't really have people that are really good listeners, And then now, obviously, my best friend, Karina, she's a phenomenal listener. And now she is a therapist. So I am
oh, I
surrounded.
didn't know that I didn't know that she's doing that. I know Barry is a therapist. I knew that, but wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
Creed is a therapist. No way. Anyway, back to you. Okay, after this podcast, I will start working on
No,
it.
no, no, no,
Okay?
no.
Yeah.
Nope. Back to you, Jared.
After this podcast, I will change. May 10th. But for May 9th, we're gonna stay the same. No, anyway, so Karina, no, no, no. Yeah. Well, I think people want to be understood,
Yep.
right? And that can be a burden sometimes. Like, I just always want to be understood. And it's like, how do people understand you? Well, you have to be vulnerable enough to give people the opportunity to try to understand you. And it doesn't mean that, like, everywhere I go, I say, I take medication, I'm bipolar, I've been suicidal. It does come out a lot in a lot of situations. And sometimes maybe it's not always helpful, right? And but other times it can be. And but yeah, I agree with you. I think we, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know. So I was gonna say about that. So Karina's a therapist. So talk about that.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say somehow I have all these friends who are therapists, so I don't know. It probably says something about me. I just need, a lot of therapists.
Well, no, but I think too, you have done a lot of therapy and you were able to get through what you were going through. I mean, obviously we're not going into a ton of detail here, but like you did try some medication, but you really were able to get through it without meds. And not that everybody needs medication, but I think more recently I've been very interested in people's stories that are along those lines, where they're able to kind of find another way, right? I don't have the answers of what the other ways are. I have some ideas like physical health. But anyway, I see you as you were able to get through it without meds, and I think that that's kind of rare, honestly, right?
Well, I mean, just to clarify, I did
Sure.
in my 20s definitely tried different medicines
Right.
to, help with depression, medicines to help with anxiety, right? And in that episode, I was on medicine, and
Yeah,
so,
that's true. Well, I mean, but you didn't stay on it like
but exactly when,
seriously.
when that
Yeah.
episode ended, the idea was obviously I weaned off that medicine with in the back of my mind going, if I need to go on medicine again, I can do that. Right. And I have a lot of friends who are on antidepressants a lot, people who find, and I think medicine can be so helpful, for me, it just the last 10 years,
Right.
yeah, I haven't needed to feel like I need to go on medicine, right?
Mhm.
Doing exactly like we all have these tools. Medicine's another tool in your toolbox that can help,
Right.
So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not anyway. I'm open to other things, I think, and I'm still on meds myself, so I'm not definitely coming from a
no,
positive thing. But yeah, yeah. Sometimes
yeah,
it
that's
worries people like, don't tell people don't take meds. It's like, no, just be careful, like do what works for you.
yeah.
But I think there's other things that I think sometimes we could minimize, you know, physical health or like exercise or the body. I've done a lot of that. I'm definitely not like I need to get more in touch with my body. But I guess a closing thought would be like, what advice do you give to people who are struggling? I do ask a lot of people who are guests on here. I didn't ask mom that, but you know, you've had a lot of experience. I mean, your job at Biola was pretty much were a counselor. So, like, but what would you say to someone who maybe they know someone that's suicidal because you're in that situation with me, but then also they could be just in a episode um, themselves. And I know we've talked about how when we struggle, like we go to meetings or we listen to podcasts or we listen to books, to try to get some hope. So sometimes I picture people listening to this and like maybe fast forwarding to the end and going, wait, what's the advice? Tell me the hope, and you've already kind of touched on some stuff about that. So what would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, man, and gosh, I feel like I've been in the same boat as you, where I just want to fast forward, like just tell me what to do, right?
Yeah. 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 That's a
And
hard one.
gosh, I'm just feeling that inside. Like it feels like that moment where the lights are out and everything is so dark, and you're just like, how do I get the lights back on? How do I get life to look like it did before?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it just feels like everything in life, this is not the life I know. This
Yeah.
is
It
not,
loses its color. Like everything's
yep.
black and white. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you know, what I would say is, you're not alone. And there's obviously over 6 billion people in the world. And there's, I'm sure, millions in this very moment that are also in a very hard time. And so to be in solidarity with all of those people, right? And to, start reaching out as much as you can. And even if you run into whether that's a meeting, a therapist, I think just giving yourself as much structure as you can in your life, right?
Yeah.
Of you wake up and you feel terrible and you're like, okay, what is the next thing I'm going to do, right?
Mhm.
Um, and just really, really reaching out. And if somebody, if they can't listen and somebody's not a good fit, hopefully that would lead to someone else. But it really is, it's, the people around you of these meetings, therapists, any type of work you can do. It's it's that action, right? It's like when all else fails and you just feel like you're not good at doing anything, it's like you can start reaching out. You can go to coffee with people, right? You have to reach out to others. Even if you're, your random old lady neighbor who you feel like doesn't understand you, it's like
Yeah.
go up, go to
You'd be
coffee with her.
surprised. You'd be surprised. Yeah.
Just any, because I think it's the isolation, right? And it's the not having that any kind of structure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be one of them. And then, I mean, anything you can do with your body, moving your body. Like I saw that there's a video going around Instagram that, when you're exercising or you're in nature or you're moving, that your body actually produces, it's like hope molecules. Like
Yeah, it's the same as taking
legitimately.
an antidepressant, is what
Yep.
some people have said. Maybe that's like an oversimplification, but 45-minute run is the same as Wellbutrin, and it's like, no, I'd rather take the pill. I don't want to run or run
Yeah.
in the sun and then do some deep breathing breath work for 10 minutes. Just try that for like 7 days. I guarantee you'll feel better.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So exactly. It's like I took that really good course called The Science of Well-Being. It's a course, I think they offer it for free at Yale. And
Okay.
talk about um essentially the science of like how do you have a good well-being, right? And it's like there's gratitude, it's getting sleep, it's exercise, it's social connections. They talk about gratitude, savoring, meditation. So, I mean, it's hard because when you're in an extreme hard place, I mean, obviously you're not going to be practicing breathing and going to 24-hour fitness, like, with your hair in a ponytail. It's like,
Instinctually, no, you're not, but you got to kind of maybe
so
fight
it's
that. But
like, yeah, when you're in the hardest place of your life, you can't just practice gratitude and pick up a book. It's going to feel impossible to do those things,
right,
right?
right.
So I think for me, the easiest when I'm in the hardest time is picking up the phone and calling people. And then it's, trying to exercise and just telling myself, okay, today I'm in a storm, I'm in 10-foot waves, it's dark, and the storm's gonna roll out. Tomorrow's gonna be a different day, and I'm not gonna make major decisions in desolation. And this storm can't last, and then usually, out of an episode, it's like his mercies are new every morning. There does feel like hope in the morning,
Yeah,
when you're in a major episode, it won't feel like that.
yeah,
And then you're going to just keep doing the same type of thing, structure every day, the next right thing you can do, and you'll get
yeah,
out.
yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. So, well, thank you for being on the podcast and being on YouTube and wherever this goes, Instagram,
Oh, great.
if you're okay with that.
That's fine, Jerry.
Okay, cool. Well, anyway, let all your friends know in Poulsbo all your problems. We'll just cut out anything that is no. Um, no, but whether we did this podcast or not, I mean, today's a special day, and I do appreciate you coming on here. It's fun to talk. And you have anything that you want to promote? I mean, anything. I do usually ask people that, but sometimes people are just like, find me on Instagram. You're
Anything I want to promote. I love it.
any
Um,
books, any memoirs? No, I'm just kidding.
no, the thing I will promote, one thing I'm a big believer in, obviously with my career, is I am a big believer in home ownership. So if you feel like, doesn't matter where you live, if you feel like I need to own a home one day, right? How do I even start? Like that's a conversation I'd love to have with someone, because I wish when I was in my early 20s, I bought homes, and I didn't know all that information until my mid 30s, right? So,
Okay.
or like my early 30s. So yeah, that's my promotion, is that I want everyone to own a house and more houses, and that's where I think wealth is built, in home ownership. And
Yeah.
it's also, I mean, home is very special. It's like our stories and where
Yeah.
we have our memories. So
Yeah. So tell us how many homes you've sold. No, I'm just kidding. Give us the stats. No, I'm joking. But no, that's awesome. Yeah.
you can Google me, Jared.
Alyssa Ahern and Scott Ahern, and now your website's on here.
Yeah, but that's my
Instagram.
big promotion.
Yeah.
I want to
Okay.
help people keep buying houses. So anywhere. And actually, I am licensed in Washington, but I love connecting people to good local people in their areas too. So
Okay.
thanks, Jared. Thanks for the spotlight. Promotional.
Well, let's sell some solar together, except it's kind of hard to do in Seattle.
Yeah,
So,
no.
well, I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I mean, when I say no, it is hard because it rains here.
I know. I'm like, dang. No. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go, and it's been an honor talking to you. Thank you for taking the time. No interruptions from kids. It's awesome.
Yeah, I have no
Nobody's
idea
run
how
in
they're
and been like, "What are you doing?" So,
I have no idea, how
are
they're
you?
gonna
Wait, is everybody at school or what?
No, the boys are at golf, and then I'm supposed to be working. So you said, "Oh, listen, do you have a few minutes?" So
I
I was
did
thinking,
say. Sorry,
okay,
I
we
didn't
just
tell you this was going to be an hour. I didn't know how much time. I was assuming you didn't have much time, so I was like, well, I was thinking like 15 minutes. But anyway, thank you because I talked
yeah.
with mom
Oh,
for a
yeah,
while.
I do have my nanny here because I'm supposed to be working, and I love this type of work. This is the best work.
For sure. Okay, well, I'll let you get back to the rest of your day.
Okay.
All right.
I love
Family
you,
is
Jared.
forever. Okay.
Okay.
Love you.
Love
Okay.
you.
Bye.
Bye.